The end is finally near. The regular season has concluded, and we are on our way to the postseason with the conference championship week coming up in college football. And we are, a little bit under 1 week away from our college football playoff bracket being revealed. And I know it feels like it was just yesterday that we were just starting the first episode of this podcast. I believe it was week 3 or week 4 of the college football season. And now we are here after the regular season, ready to talk some conference championships, ready to talk some head coaching situations that have really been breaking news this weekend, and as well as some potential shakeups in the college football playoff rankings, which are going to be interesting because of some conference championship matchups. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about today. The regular season's done. The postseason is here. The boys are back. We have Justin Chevalella, Dylan Price, Josh Bartosik. I'm your host, Thomas English. Gentlemen, a lot to talk about today, so I'm going to keep things short, but how are we doing today?
Horrible. You ever see people living out your dream and you get jealous? Because I watch LSU fans and I watch Auburn fans and I'm watching all these other fans get head coaches. And here we are, our alma mater, still sitting here without a head coach as we are about to turn the calendar to December with National Signing Period opening on Wednesday. So horrible in that sense, but I mean, in a life sense, I'm good. How about we go to Sniffly and ask how Josh is doing
Josh,
today?
how are you doing?
Wow, that's crazy. Well, patience is a virtue, Justin. I think
I've never had that in my life, and you all know
clearly
that.
You haven't, because I don't think there was really, maybe besides the guy that went to LSU, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot today. Maybe he was probably the only person that was on people's list for a Penn State head coach. You can maybe say Alex Golesh, but I don't think anybody that really was taken off the board today was somebody that I looked at and I was like, darn, I really wish that they were the head coach of Penn State. Besides the sniffles, I'm doing good as well.
It was a week of thanks and giving, and a week that saw a lot of good old-fashioned hate in the rivalry week, and even in our group chat and on the phone calls. Justin and Thomas got a 1 a.m. phone call from me last night where I ranted about Terry Smith and argued with Justin. And then
for
Thomas
some of us, it lasted a lot longer than just a couple minutes, like Thomas, who hung up.
Justin heard the aftermath of my then rant on the future of the Penn State coaching cycle, which Justin and I have both promised to rehash part of that again today, with less insults being flung on both sides. But with all of that said, other than having lack of sleep because I had a 1 a.m. argument with Justin over the Penn State coaching search.
Let's also remember that your 1 a.m. and my 1 a.m. are a little bit different.
Good point. Other than the lack of sleep, I'm doing fine and dandy. Loving the Thanksgiving leftovers too, by the way. Clutch to not have to cook. But Thomas, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. I know I did. Definitely good to get some family time or watch some football, whatever you did. So, yeah, definitely good to be back home after a lot of driving in just a few days. But like,
how much did you do and how much did your significant other do? That's the real question.
Let's see. I drove 4.5 on Wednesday.
Okay.
I drove the 4 hours back on Friday and then 4.5 again today. She drove a total, I believe, of 4.
Look at you not being the passenger princess.
I did majority of it.
I'm so proud of you, man.
Well, I'll tell you what. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. and by the time I got to her place in St. Louis, I was ready to fall asleep at the wheel. So it was good that I didn't have to do the second part of the drive. Otherwise, I may not be on this podcast, which is. But I will say there was a lot of travel for everybody. With holiday traveling, the roads were jam-packed, and the snow.
Not if you go really late at night, is what I found out, and it's a beautiful thing to be on the road at 11:30 on a Monday night in the pitch black without any street lights, because for whatever reason, Connecticut doesn't have street lights on the highways at certain points, and you just cruise down with your windows open. Only for part of
a horror movie.
Only for part of the trip.
Degrees in Connecticut. Why are you driving with your windows open?
Oh, come on, guys. You know me. I love the cold.
with his shorts on as well.
Listening
No,
to
I came
Sports
from
Talk
work. I had
Radio.
pants on.
I would say listening to no music because he hates
Yeah,
music.
oh yeah.
No,
Yeah.
in fact, I was listening to what I had done at work that day, so it just was on my radio.
I have one more follow-up question, Thomas, about your personal life. Have you spoken to your professional dancer significant other and asked her thoughts on Dancing with the Stars and the finale? Because I have a lot of them, and I know that was a very big hot button issue in this group chat last week.
I did very briefly. She was happy that Robert won it because of Bindy's prior win. She said that she liked his story the best. She did not comment on the dancing because she's didn't want to trash the celebrities' attempts to become professional dancers. He does enjoy the show, although not as much as some of our other friends who were texting me to vote, which I've never voted once in my life. So.
Well, you missed a great show, guys. It was a phenomenal finale.
You know, we got our own show.
Rightful
I had the
winner.
popcorn out, my feet up while Lane Kiffin was getting
Yeah.
into an airplane today. So maybe we
Yeah, I
talk
was
about that show instead.
Well, I was going to
Justin's a
segue
Dancing
into
with
that
the
with
Stars
all the
hater.
holiday
I
travel.
don't hate it. I just don't understand the appeal of watching people dance.
Anyways,
I
Andy
mean,
was back. That was my whole point. I just needed to bring it up. Anyways, we can get it to the actual talking.
well, I was going to get into it with the holiday travel. Some head coaches did some holiday traveling with some coaches moving to different universities.
That would have been
and
a
we'll
lot
just-
smoother if it was 2 minutes ago.
Well, I
All
try
right.
my
God
best.
forbid I get a couple words in edgewise. Those were my requisite minutes in the episode before Josh takes the rest of them.
Why me? I don't.
All right. Lane Kiffin is now the head coach at LSU. This was developing for a couple of days over the weekend, and then finally kind of like solidified itself really earlier this morning, I guess. He had a team meeting, which he ultimately was not allowed to go to. We thought he was going to be able to kind of give a talk of some sort and things like that. But there was a lot of pettiness, I guess you could say, with, for lack of a better word, between Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, which probably better that he decided to leave, because if there was some situations where he decided to stay, I feel like there was already bad tensions in the air. But basically, Lane Kiffin coming out and saying, if you don't let me coach in the college football playoff, I'm taking offensive players, mainly offensive coaches and staff with me to Ole Miss immediately. And Ole Miss basically saying, you're not coaching in the college football playoff if you are leaving for LSU. And ultimately that has been the decision. And that is going to stir up a lot. There were some other movements today. Alex Golesh got hired. Arkansas hired their coach as well, Summerfield. And, Michigan State got their coach and Pat Fitzgerald, some other, notable ones as well. But I think the biggest news, obviously, is this Lane Kiffin news. And I think the biggest thing with it is it's not necessarily as much about Lane going to LSU. That has almost become secondary in this situation, because there is another issue with the timeline of things. We saw it last year, us Penn Staters with Bo Perbula as a player being able or having to make the decision of, I'm not going to play in the college football playoff because I would like to enter this transfer portal that is coming up right away, and ultimately missing out on a deep run for Penn State. Now you look at Lane Kiffin with Ole Miss, a team that is 11-1, seeded very well in the college football playoff. I believe they're pretty much a guarantee to have a home game in the first round, and they'll be without Lane Kiffin for this playoff run. So I want to go to Justin first on the scheduling in the timeline of this, because I think we can all agree it's not fair for both parties. It's not fair for Ole Miss to have a coach leave midseason, and it's not fair for Lane Kiffin to not be able to coach his team into the playoff. I think you can agree with that, Justin.
No, I can't one bit, actually.
Okay.
There is not an issue at hand here with any of this scheduling and whatnot. There's never going to be a coaching opening portal or window or anything like that. The simple matter of fact is that coaching contracts are done by the universities at their own leisure whenever they need to be done. there's not a problem with this because Lane Kiffin is greedy, and that's the reason he's leaving. He's leaving because he thinks the grass is greener. And I know from our conversation with Dylan, he's going to tell us how the grass isn't always greener. And that's going to be the case, in my opinion, for Lane Kiffin. There isn't an issue here. If Lane Kiffin wasn't greedy, if he saw exactly what he has seen in his team all year, there wouldn't be a conversation that we're having right now. We'd be talking about Ole Miss potentially winning the entire national championship. This is an 11-1 SEC football team. You can't really say that in this day and age that, there's a team in the SEC with only one loss and now is without its head coach. This has nothing to do with Ole Miss. I mean, it does, but has nothing to do with Ole Miss. It has nothing to do with the NCAA needing to put on a window of some sort or anything. This is entirely a one-off situation. Look at how Tulane is handling it with Sumrall, and I bet you USF would handle it with Golesh if they had gotten to where they thought they were going to go. They would let them coach. But this is because of the nature of the situation of Lane not just leaving. He's leaving for a rival, and he is leaving for a rival thinking the grass is greener after that rival went 8-4 this year, fired a head coach, and missed an 8-4 year, which many programs would take. And it's greedy, and there's not a problem with how any of this, in my opinion, went down from the Ole Miss side of things. I just think that when we look at this and look at how things were handled, I think Ole Miss has a great shot to win the national championship. I think this year is almost as equal of a playing field as we've seen in years, as we've talked about week in and week out, and to up and out of a place that gave you another chance as a head coach to follow in your father's footsteps nonetheless, and really had seemingly helped him get his life together too. When you think of his personal life behind all of this, getting all that together in Oxford, Ole Miss gave him the world, and all he gave back was a double middle finger. And honestly, the way he was ready to take coaches with him and take players with him, you can leave, but don't start trying to burn this place down and burn this program down. This is a program you should take pride in the way you built it up. And right now, if you're, anyone connected to Ole Miss, the way he's handled this, if I'm a player, I'm not transferring to LSU to follow this guy watching what he just did to us. I just think there's nothing wrong, to your question, with a timeline or anything like that. This is all a one-off situation because there's a greedy guy that we all knew was going to get greedy, and a guy that we knew was going to search for more money, and he thinks he's going to get more resources at LSU, which could be the case. But at the end of the day, he wants to win a national championship. That's his goal. There is no better opportunity for him to win a national championship than the year that he's 11-1. Like you said, a home playoff game locked in. They're going to the college football playoff, and he ups and outs. I'm mad for the people in Oxford, Mississippi, and I have no connection to Oxford, Mississippi, because I don't think any of it was handled correctly by Lane. And honestly, if I had a team of 120 guys and all those coaches, I don't know how, as a good standard human being, you can just walk away as, these guys' dreams could be crushed because they don't have their head coach, and it could change seeding in the college football playoff. And you have to see how they, handle the adversity now given their way.
Yeah, and we've seen already with the College Football Playoff Committee, even when it was a 4-team field, of how they view injuries and how they view, transfer portal players and things of that sort. So there's already kind of a precedent set where Ole Miss very well could drop in this rankings despite, not having anything negative really happen besides their head coach. But Dylan, I want to go to you with a question of kind of going off of Justin's point. Is this more about Lane Kiffin and his response, or is this more of a Ole Miss thing? And would a solution have been letting Lane Kiffin coach the rest of the college football playoff?
You couldn't do that. There's no world, unfortunately, where you allow a guy with his track record within the same conference and with the level of pull that he has with players, with individuals, and with personalities as a whole, will continue to be around your program. It's kind of like having a snake lying in the weeds. And that's not to say that Lane's a snake. It's to say that you have a guy in the weeds who's literally moving there in months as soon as the season is done, and is also at a point where LSU needs to start building a staff. LSU needs to start building everything together and putting together the finishing touches, because they didn't lose a lot of recruits, by the way. They didn't get gutted the same way Penn State did. They need to go into player retention mode and then player acquisition mode. And it's hard for Lane to do that when his focus then at the same time would be on Ole Miss and trying to make it work. If there was anybody who was going to be able to pull it off, I think it could have been Lane Kiffin. I just think that it was a scenario in which Ole Miss could never willingly allow him, especially after the fire that he has lit off and this Molotov cocktail that he has just dropped on the Manning Football Center, to continue to just fester and while you're trying to keep your sole focus on the national title. Lane's a great coach. I do think Lane is a good guy. None of the four of us know anything about him other than what we have seen from him and from getting the opportunity to watch a really well done documentary and then follow his career as fans. We don't know anything about his personal beliefs other than what he said. And what he said in his interview with Marty Smith today was the quote that kind of stood out to me the most. At his dad's funeral, Monty Kiffin, he said there was about 17 different stops that Monty had in his coaching career. There was somebody from all 17 of those spots, and players and coaches and relatives and whatever it may be, because Monty jumped around. And at the end of the day, Lane is about legacy. Lane's about doing things not for him. He says, at least in his ending, it was the last quote of the documentary, was that, for so long, people thought I was selfish and doing things for me. I want to do things for other people. None of this decision is done if Monty Kiffin didn't have the exact same track record of bouncing around and being a bit of a pinball. And so I think that with that track record, with all of it, to your point, Thomas, there was no way you could allow him to continue to stick around. And Lane's whole thing is that he wants to now impact people the same way. That's where, to get to the point that Justin alluded to me having, the grass isn't always greener. And in Oxford, Mississippi, he could have never won a national title, and they would have built him a statue for what he's done to resurrect this program. And we've all become bigger Lane Kiffin fans during his time in Oxford. And we've all, I think, in the college football landscape, seen Lane have a 180 of his public image. To take it to that personal level. I mean, the guy's sober, doing hot yoga, lost a ton of weight. His PR has been better. The guy's just unapologetically Lane Kiffin, and he seems to be loving life in a way he wasn't when all the drama happened years ago with Tennessee, USC, Vegas, wherever the heck he was in his crazy run there. It seems like it was the Lane Kiffin Reclamation Project. And today, not just did he drop a Molotov cocktail on the Manning Football Center, I feel like he dropped that on his own image. He could be okay. He can build a program at LSU, and I think I'm the opposite of Justin. Like, I think this is going to work out great. The fact he was already pictured with the number one recruit in the country, I think that's a pretty good sign that everything is going to work out in Baton Rouge, particularly because of the resources. But I think this whole notion that the grass is always greener, we just saw it bottom out with their previous head coach and Brian Kelly, who had a pretty good thing in South Bend and chose to chase his own selfish ambitions. So I don't know if it all would have worked out if they let him stay. I don't know if it's the right decision. And I certainly don't know if following a track record of just bouncing around from place to place is what is the best decision, especially with how his image has changed. So I have a lot of thoughts on it. I know I bounced around a little bit there, but I'm not as animated as Justin to say that I think this was a bad decision for Lane or isn't going to work out. I think there's a very real chance LSU wins a national title in the next 3 years. Lane works quickly too, by the way. And so I think they're going to give him more resources than he had at Ole Miss. And that's what I think it came down to, that and following his dad's legacy. And I also think Ole Miss will be okay for now. I don't think they will be after this year.
Josh, I want to go to you next because there's a lot of college football playoff implications with this, because as much as, and I heard arguments a little bit from Justin on that phone call last night, but there's some interesting things with this in Ole Miss, because obviously you're without your head coach, but how much was he calling plays? How much was he, affecting the defense and that kind of decision? And do you think Ole Miss will be docked a spot or two in the college football playoff, and especially with a college football playoff ranking that could really, be crazy with G5 teams and the ACC being left out potentially with a Duke win? How do you see this affecting the college football playoff, and how do you think Ole Miss does in the rest of the season?
I think it's an interesting narrative because, we were talking about it a little bit ago, just that in the 4-team playoff, the CFP kind of already set that precedent with Florida State. When Jordan Travis went down, they left an undefeated ACC team, an undefeated Power 5 or a Power 4 team out of the playoff. And there's already been talks that this would happen if Lane Kiffin left. I think you'd possibly see them drop a spot maybe, but there's no way they get kept out of the playoff like Justin alluded to earlier. I mean, this is an 11-1 SEC team. Maybe they didn't have the toughest strength of schedule, sure, but they still went 11-1 in what everyone loves to say is the hardest conference in college football. I think that the decision they made to elevate Pete Golding was probably the best case scenario for Ole Miss. I think you saw or you heard rumors, and there were some leaks of the some potential leaks of the audio that happened in that team meeting where they announced that it was going to be Pete Golding. He's beloved by those players. They'll fight for that guy. Ole Miss has already rallied around Pete Golding. All their social media ads, everyone on that staff, everyone in the athletic department has done so. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a dip necessarily for Ole Miss because their defense was fine. I think Lane Kiffin has always been more of an offensive-minded kind of guy, and I think there's still going to be a ton of talent on that Ole Miss team. I don't think you're going to see anybody sit out of the college football playoff to try and go play for LSU next year. I think this is a roster that can easily still find a way to make some noise in the college football playoff. I think that they made the right choice elevating their defensive coordinator. I think they're still in a good spot. I think it does definitely affect the committee, and I think the committee already knows that they've kind of put themselves in a very tough bind. We'll find out later this week how things are going to shape up, but they're in a tough bind regardless. This just kind of throws another knot or a wrench in what they probably thought was going to be. I think we'll get to it in a little bit when we talk about the rankings, but in my opinion, I think what the committee has done is they were ranking teams based on how they thought the season was going to go. And the season these last few weeks has not gone that way at all. And now they're kind of put themselves in a, oh, shoot, what are we going to do situation? But maybe Ole Miss drops a spot. I think Texas A&M losing this week probably bumps Ole Miss. There's a few bumps that happen. I think they'll probably try and talk a little bit about how, they don't have their they didn't have their head coach, so they'll drop a spot. You can't drop them out of the playoff. And I still think with the way that we've seen that community already rally around their new coach in Pete Golding, who's been a fantastic defensive coordinator for Ole Miss too, I think they're going to be just fine. I think, honestly, if anything, it gives that team a lot more motivation for a potential home playoff game to go out and prove that they aren't just a Lane Kiffin-led squad, that this is, the Ole Miss here and now, that they don't need a guy like Lane Kiffin. If he, is able to just up and walk out in the middle of the season, they'll prove that they don't need him at the helm. They'll find a way to win regardless.
I think it's safe to say, at least in my opinion, this is one of those teams in Ole Miss throughout this season that, despite that loss to Georgia, they have kind of been able to put up with anything that has been thrown at them. They have been in shootouts, they have been in defensive battles. So I think it's a team primed, like you're saying, Josh, for with or without Lane Kiffin, a team primed for a potential run in the college football playoff. I do want to recap some of the other hirings. I feel like we've kind of established our thoughts on the Lane Kiffin situation. Florida, as Justin briefly mentioned, John Sumrall from Tulane is the new Florida head coach. Alex Golesh is at Auburn. Ryan Silverfield, I believe I pronounced that or said that name wrong incorrectly earlier, so my apologies. Ryan Silverfield from Memphis is at Arkansas. Let's see, Jim Mora we knew is at Colorado State from UConn. Eric Morris from North Texas at Oklahoma State. James Franklin at Virginia Tech. And then Penn State got a new head coach as well. So those are kind of your head coaching hires that we know of to date. A lot of action this weekend. Is there any in particular that you want to touch on, or is there anything you want to mention as far as those are a lot of teams that have been in the conversation for the college football playoff? I'll kind of open the floor to any three of you guys.
I think the most intriguing is going to be what Eric Morris does with Oklahoma State as a guy that's produced at the quarterback position throughout his coaching career, most recently with Drew Mestemaker this year, who could end up following him to Oklahoma State. I think all these are intriguing hires. I don't know if I was a fan of any of these teams, if I'd be like, oh my God, we improved at head coach so much or whatnot with any of these guys, but I think they have so much upside and potential because they're all kind of still in that, limbo period of their coaching careers where they're trying to make that jump from being a good head or a great head football coach at a lesser known school to being a great head football coach at, a Power 4 team. I'm most intrigued, though, by Eric Morrison for Oklahoma State, a program that kind of didn't have that alignment throughout its administration with when Gundy was still there before he kind of finished out. All we've heard is that they're going to pour the resources necessary to make them a staple in college football again. So I think that could be very, very interesting to watch Eric Morris. I think he, of the guys we've named, at going from a smaller school, not including Franklin, I guess is the way to put it, going from a smaller school to a bigger school, I think Eric Morris might be most best positioned in a sense because he's not going to be too highly pressured, but at the same time, he's going to have the resources just like Sumrall and Golesh are going to have at these bigger schools, but they're going to be more pressured to win almost immediately. So I think Eric Morris, who is a great coach at North Texas, and I'm glad they're allowing him to coach the conference championship this week, because I think they could still make the college football playoffs. So then we'll have to see how it handles it from there. But that's my thoughts on those other hires.
Dylan, I know you're covering a little bit of Arkansas sports. Maybe if you have some opinions on Silverfield. I know you're also high on Alex Golesh as well.
I think both of them fall into the same tier as John Sumrall, as well as, one of the three, I think, at least let's play the odds game here. One of the three is probably going to work out. All three could bottom out, but you look at the odds, you look at the coaching track records, one of the three is likely to do well. On Silverfield, real quickly, Adam Brenneman did a great sit down with him where he talked a little bit about how he brings other coaches in to look at his program, or he goes and visits a lot of other coaches because he likes to be a kind of a student of the game and find out what he could be doing better. He's a young guy. It takes a special kind of character, I think, to succeed in Fayetteville, because obviously the state doesn't have a professional football team or a professional sports team point blank. So everybody is a Hogs fan. He's the new head Hog. And I think there's a lot of momentum behind trying to just put your eggs in a basket of a young, exciting coach. And I think Silverfield fits that bill. I think it's interesting. And I think it's certainly a fascinating hire. Of the other one, John Sumrall to me was the most interesting. This guy is a big personality who's now going to be on a bigger stage. And I think that's going to be really fascinating. Any coach who willingly says my team doesn't belong in the top 25 certainly strikes me as one I would want to hear more from in both ways, just for pure entertainment value and also because he could be a true home run hire for them. I think it's interesting to see a lot of teams continue to go back to the G5 pool and try to, I know in this era of college football, it's hard to poach coaches, but clearly some coaches are doing it. And teams like Florida and Auburn that have so many resources, especially fiscally, I'm shocked that they didn't take a bigger swing. But I think that it's hard in both those spots because they haven't had a lot of success recently. I just found it interesting, more so on the Florida end of things, that I like Sumrall. I think he's a fun personality. I think he's got a really good track record, the best of the three of those bunch that got hired today. But I think the thing that sticks out to me about Sumrall in Florida as a fit was always, you just did the G5 thing and it didn't work out. What if you at least tried a Power 4 coordinator, a young up-and-coming coach, or took a swing in that regard? You just went back to the same formula yet again. And so I think that was all fascinating. And I think we all know that the next domino to fall has got to be Penn State. And it doesn't seem like they're playing small ball, but if Justin gets his way, they will. But no, anyways.
We'll get to this in a second because I know this is going to come up. Let's let Josh and Thomas get their thoughts on these guys. Because that's not my thoughts on this. That's what I want to.
The only thing I was going to say is I think a conversation that we could have in the next couple of weeks is, honestly, which job is better, Ole Miss or Penn State? I feel like you could go either way. But, Josh, I want to get your thoughts on any of those hires that we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do really want to see how things go for Ryan Silverfield at Arkansas, because there were, a few weeks there where I think there were some Memphis fans that kind of wanted him out the door already. And, there's some Arkansas fans that are probably like, well, if we have a guy that was on a hot seat in a Group of 5 team, how is he not going to be on a hot seat in a Power 4 conference? Not just that, but an SEC team where this is an Arkansas team that just really hasn't had anything going for them in quite some time, and it's been really frustrating, I'm sure, to be a fan down there. Regardless, I think Alex Golesh is a good hire. I think there was a long time, or not even a long time, I think it was earlier this week before it randomly became Auburn was the front runner, that it looked like he was going to go to Arkansas. And then all of a sudden he goes to Auburn. I think it's an okay move for them. I think in the Hugh Freeze thing didn't really work out for them. I think Golesh is better than Hugh Freeze. I think it depends on what he can do with, a lot more vast resources. I think just the SEC in general is going to look a lot different. And I think that Dylan, can you turn your phone off?
Sorry, it's my mother. So she's getting through Do Not Disturb, and she keeps emphasizing it. Sorry, guys.
Jesus. Pull a link, Kiffin, and tell her to move on. Good Lord, dude.
Oh, my God.
Anyways, SEC is going to be in a ridiculous situation next year. I think it's going to be a very fun year, I think, to watch the SEC and see how all these first-year head coaches do. And I'm really excited to see how Sumrall and Golesh especially work out.
I think Silverfield, for me, is the most interesting one because I saw some videos and tweets today on social media of some Arkansas fans / reporters really expressing that they were not interested in getting.
They held a protest today.
Yeah,
outside.
Yeah, that was some of the stuff I saw. But I think I saw the most interesting was people saying like it's clear the university's focused more on other sports than promoting the football team, which being in the SEC, I would think it would be the opposite, that you would focus.
I mean,
on
they got
football.
a massive boost from their boosters, literally, to go out and poach John Calipari not that long ago. And I think for a lot of Arkansas fans, just from what I've gathered from being here and talking to them, the fan base feels as though, why can't you do the same thing for football? But historically, let's look at the track record. They've been a better basketball school. So why wouldn't you continue to invest in something you've already had the standard of excellence?
There's also stats that kind of back it. I mean, Ryan Silverfield at Memphis was 3-12 against teams above 500 while on the road, 12-20 in general against teams above 500, 0 AAC title game appearances in 6 seasons. And all things considered, when you think about Memphis, they're towards the upper echelon of the AAC. And he went 4-4 in AAC play this year with losses to UAB, East Carolina, Navy, and Tulane. So
I was gonna say,
it's all out there in a sense of I can understand why they would be frustrated. I think it's a good hire for Arkansas. I think it's going to work out well.
I was just gonna say. I mean, his conference record at Memphis is 27-21, so it's not anything that's like he's dominated at the G5 levels. But I just think it's interesting that the fans were pointing more towards being a basketball and even a baseball school as opposed to football. So
when you start your hiring cycle and everyone goes from, oh, you're getting James Franklin to never mind, you might get Lane Kiffin to never mind, you keep going down. I think they were given a false sense of reality or a false sense of hope that they were going to get the big fish. And in some of their minds, this is not anything close to a big fish.
But I think every school, to go to the other conversation that we want to have here and broaden things, every school wants the big fish right now. Every school wants the big, flashy Lane Kiffin-esque name, and there just aren't that many out there. So you have to take a swing on a G5 coach. And I think there's no G5 coach that are at a smaller program that are going to at least a smaller program like a Memphis that played a lot of Power 5 or Power 4 opponents still going to walk away with still a good record. So I think that's just always one thing. It's like the Matt Rule top opponents rule. Most of the teams that we've seen Matt Rule coach have sucked, and the whole turnaround factor is what makes Matt Rule so interesting. And yet the whole notion that everybody holds over Matt Rule's head is that he has not done well against top teams. Yeah, because the teams he had guys who played football the same amount of years as Justin in high school. I don't know if we should exactly be grading that and putting all of our stock in it. So I just think the whole conversation, sometimes we look at these records and we look at these G5 coaching hires. And I mean, I just criticized it a little bit to an extent in my other point, but to kind of play devil's advocate, your record's going to suck if you're playing Power 4 schools and your quarterback was a dishwasher at Applebee's in his spare time.
You could have said Olive Garden and taken a shot at Josh. Come on.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, it's not like these guys were born and bred to play football.
Going through, so let's give me some slack today.
And Dylan, you keep bringing up these Power 4 or non-Power 4 coaches, this group of 5. you thinking about? Like, which specific guy are you thinking about for which opening here? Because I know that's the conversation you want to actually get to, is you want to say the name that happens to be the same last name as one of your favorite musicians in relation to the Penn State job.
It's not even just necessarily. So to pull the peel behind the curtain, Justin and I have been having a long debate over the past week about whether or not Penn State should hire Bob Chesney or should hire Terry Smith. I am of the notion that I think Penn State should take a swing and hire a head coach from another program and not buy into this flash in the pan. I am against hiring interim head coaches in a general sense, although there was one exception to this rule. I thought DJ Durkin, because nothing has worked out at Auburn in the past couple years anyways.
You also said the Ole Miss DC taking over is going to have a good rest of his year here.
Yeah, because their quarterback's one of the top 5 in football right now, and Kawan Lacey, and that defense will be fine. They'll be able to hold their own. I think Josh could coach them right now, and they'd be able to win at least a game against JMU or something in the first round. So that's just my point. But to bring back to the JMU point, I think if you're Penn State, you have to hire a coach at another Power 4 program. Your recruiting class is barren. You're not looking alluring right now. I know in Happy Valley and in the 814, everyone thinks that Terry Smith is a big selling point right now, but I hate to break the walls down for you. He's not going to be. He's a hell of a recruiter. He's a great guy. And if he is the next head coach of Penn State, I will, of course, back him wholeheartedly, as I think all 4 of us will, because he's a Penn Stater and he's done a great job as the interim. But at a time where the culture, you just fired a head coach who's built the same culture for 12 years because you wanted a switch flipped to continue to drive that culture and invest in it in the long term, just to me makes zero sense, because you're back at square one and you're doing it with someone who is not going to keep all these same guys who are running around holding the hire Terry Smith posters. That's the thing that I think is lost on everybody. They think just because they're backing Terry to be the head coach, he's going to suddenly wave his hands and keep all of these players. Half of them are graduating or going to the NFL. Sorry if I'm breaking that news for everybody in the Penn State world right now. And the other thing I have to say about it is they're 18 to 22-year-olds. They could wake up tomorrow morning and Lane Kiffin could be knocking on their door with a multi-million-dollar check to come play there. Suddenly, the little hometown rub of the interim head coach doesn't look as good when you're presented with a multi-million-dollar offer to go elsewhere. So we can still continue to say we're going to put all these eggs in the basket of hiring an interim head coach, which, by the way, there are flashes in the pans and examples in which it's worked out. But more often than not, it doesn't. And you're going to go back to square one. And when your culture's already stagnant and you're trying to make a move to elevate it, just keeping the standard and keeping things the same, you should have just kept James at that point then and done the same shtick we've done for the last 12 years. Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, to go right back at you, for me, let me get this straight, because I think you continue to misinterpret what I'm saying. Terry Smith is not my number one candidate for this Penn State job. If Pat Kraft is willing to take a big swing and could potentially lure someone away, and we have heard names that I would have never guessed to hear in the Penn State coaching search when it first came up. We've heard Kalen DeBoer. We've heard Kalani Sitake over at BYU most recently. Lincoln Riley, of all people, was getting floated this week. If that's what you're willing to do, then yeah, I'm all for it. However, if it comes down to Bob Chesney versus Terry Smith, that is where I pull the Terry Smith is the better option for Penn State. I don't think Terry Smith is the best option for Penn State, but if it came down to Chesney or like a Power 4 or Group of 5 equivalent to Chesney, I would take Terry Smith 10 times out of 10, because, yeah, you can say, oh, well, why would we fire James and keep a guy that's been his right-hand man for 12 years? Because things have actually changed in 6 weeks or 2 months, whatever it's been, 6 games. Like, there's actually been change, and there's been change to the way things are going on the field, and there's changes that we don't even see off the field. He's a great recruiter too. Yes, he's Penn State blue. He bleeds blue and white. But at the same time, my biggest hesitations aren't about, getting rid of the Penn Stater. My biggest hesitation is with Bob Chesney and Bob Chesney's lack really of coaching experience at the big level. He's only been at JMU for 2 years, this being his second. Before that, he's at Salve, he's at Assumption, he's at Holy Cross. He doesn't have big name coaching experience in any sense of the imagination, not even as an assistant. He was an assistant for Johns Hopkins. He's been at JMU for only a couple of years, and he took over a program that's been a relatively consistent program in the group of five prior to Curt Cignetti, then with Curt Cignetti, and now with Bob Chesney. How much of their success is actually Chesney's success is my questions with all of this. Yeah, he's a Pennsylvania guy, but at the same time, does that really move too much? We've seen Penn State struggles with recruiting Pennsylvania guys in a general sense when, there's been an East Stroudsburg guy in James Franklin there this whole time, and they haven't been able to get the top guys in Pennsylvania year in and year out. And you have to attack, the bigger region, which obviously Franklin's got, I think, on lock for the time being until Penn State names an official head coach here. But I just don't see the appeal how Chesney, who has never been on a sideline for a Power 4 program, would be a better option than Terry Smith. And to go against part of what you said, yeah, a bunch of guys are leaving. They're graduating. They're going to the NFL. Guys are going to leave. That was going to happen no matter who the head coach is, even if Franklin was still there. The matter of fact is more guys are going to stay with Terry than they're going to stay with Chesney. And that I feel pretty confident in saying. And at some point you have to weigh that pros and cons of Chesney bringing over the entire JMU roster versus Terry just adding to a little bit depleted current Penn State roster. Look, I think you and I are arguing based off, really options B and C for Penn State. We really want an A-tier option. We really want the home run swing from Pat Kraft, and we're hoping we can still get it. The problem is running out of time rather quickly.
Yeah, I think
time for sure. But I just want to counter really quickly, Justin, and just trying to retain a good chunk of the roster is great and all, but you also have to remember this is a roster that went.
No, don't pull off this is a roster that went this and that. That's not an argument that I'm willing to hear, because you yourself on this podcast have said this is a team that's better than a 6-6 team. We've all said it at different points. We all keep defending Oregon's win, so they have something on their resume. I just don't think you can make a decision based off an emotional investment, and I love Terry Smith. I think Terry Smith has been fantastic. There's more behind it than the emotions. I just laid it out, the bigger picture items. Not once did I say what he's done on the field better when they fire their head coach. It's just how long can that be sustainable? How can that be sustainable long term? I don't know if it can be. I think if Terry Smith was genuinely one of the top options for Penn State to be the head coach, he would have already been named by now, considering the fact that the national signing day is in 3 days and we don't even have a hint of an idea of where Penn State's going. But based on some of the body language that Terry Smith had post game and just the kind of the flatness that Penn State came out with against Rutgers, I would have to imagine that he was told that he's probably not getting the head coaching job. But I just don't see it being a situation where he's been there the entire time and I feel like if he was genuinely one of the top options for them, they would have given him the job already. We have breaking news. Thomas, you can get in on this in a second. Breaking news, though, out of Kentucky, Mark Stoops will be fired tomorrow morning. Well, formally fired. I guess that means he's been unofficially fired tonight.
Right, yeah.
So by the time the podcast is out, he should be officially fired.
Yeah. I think the whole – man, I go back and forth because I hear Justin on some of his points. I really do. And I hear Dylan and Josh. I think when you look at Penn State and, trying to get the big fish and, do you stay in Terry Smith? I think it all comes down to, what is out there. Because at this point, I think we touched on, I think Josh mentioned it a little earlier, but I think the hires so far have not been real Penn State candidates. Alex Golesh, I would say, was one of them, but he wasn't going to be your big hire. And I think Penn State is still in a good spot. I know, we're kind of like, all right, let's get this process going, but I think they're still in a good spot with being, at this point, with LSU getting taken and Florida getting taken, the top spot. Unless you consider Ole Miss to now be that top spot, but who knows what Ole Miss is going to do in terms of.
They said permanent. I think it's more semi-permanent.
Right. Yeah, he's going to be the permanent for
a year.
A year.
Yeah. So I mean, at this point, I think Penn State is the top option, and I think that is kind of exactly what Pat Kraft was hoping for in a sense of waiting a little bit, because if you wait, sometimes good things can happen. Now, he played a huge risk. I think Justin mentioned this last week with waiting so long, is that some of these options are going to get hired because the regular season is over now, and some teams aren't playing anymore. Some teams are kind of just waiting to see their fate. But I think it's a big situation where Penn State has actually benefited from waiting this time, but now you kind of can't really wait that much longer. You've got to start really having those deep conversations and finalize it to 2 or 3 candidates and really hone in. And I think that's where, I think Terry Smith is in there. I mean, I have to imagine he is, especially with the way they've performed in the last few games. I know it hasn't been pretty, but I mean, you have to think that, and Justin, going back to one of the points you made, the Marcus Freeman effect at Notre Dame. I mean, coming in as an assistant coach, or and having that team surround you like they did, and now look at Marcus Freeman in NFL coaching conversation. So I think there's value in having Terry Smith as an option. Do I think that is the option they go with? I don't know, because I think there is more value, in my opinion, of having Terry Smith a little bit more behind the scenes as an assistant coach.
In Blacksburg, because I think at this point
he's not staying in Penn State.
He's not staying at Penn State if he's not the head coach, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I don't see him leaving. I think he bleeds Penn State too much.
It doesn't matter what he bleeds. It matters that a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds have just been holding up signs, actively campaigning for him to get a job that he doesn't get. And then some coach is going to come in and say a Bob Chesney, who's 41 years old, less experienced than him. Who are you going to look to in the room? The guy who helped bring you into State College, or some guy from Harrisonburg, Virginia? I actually think that helps Justin's point massively. And I should say
you just really did help his point.
I was going to say, who are they going to look at?
I will say
the guy that should be there, the guy that shouldn't be there. But
all I will say is that for the people that are Penn State, I guess they are running out of time with the National Sign Day coming up very quickly. But we've seen that it doesn't, if Penn State's got their eye on a big fish, I don't think Penn State has as much lure as a place like LSU does. But LSU was able to not just get a head coach that was on a playoff team, but a head coach in the playoff team that went 11-1, and LSU was able to get him before they even played in their college football playoff game. That's still a possibility for Penn State. I know that a lot of people are saying, well, if Penn State's really going for a big fish, they can't afford it to be somebody that's in the playoff. That clearly doesn't matter, because Lane Kiffin just up and left, and we know that there's already been rumblings about Kalen DeBoer for ever since he stepped foot in Alabama, that his family doesn't like it there, or the fans don't like him, or whatever it is, or any of these other teams that might even make it into the playoff, or they might get snuffed out in this next week and a half. Yeah, it's tough because Penn State's in a not great position with how big this week is in terms of recruiting. But if you truly believe that you have got a grade coach locked up and you're just waiting for either their season to be done or you're waiting to finalize a few other things, I would take that risk. But it clearly doesn't have to be the end of their season, because we just saw that with Ole Miss and LSU.
That goes to the final point I wanted to make, where if you're Penn State, if you are thinking about taking an offensive coordinator or taking a group of 5 coach and naming them as head coach, I think you're better off doing it very soon, because that shows your confidence in them. It shows that you're not hesitating to hire them or really, heavily debating if they're worth the head coach spot. And if you have a big fish, then sure, they have the resume to, wait on it and say we were just waiting for certain things to fall in line. But I think it would be a huge confidence boost, like some of these other schools are doing, to hire a G5 coach right now and say, this is our program. We've made the decision early. We're ready to go. Let's get to recruiting. Let's get to setting things up, and let's move forward. Because at this point, there's some things, dominoes are falling, and some teams are going to miss out. Some teams are going to land the perfect hire. And Penn State either needs to do that now, or they need to land the big fish in a little bit of a sooner time. So I think that is how we should wrap up this coaching debate, which has been a lot of this episode so far. Which
I think Dylan had one thing he wanted to do.
I mean, we've been hearing about the same 4 or 5 names at this point that are left.
Dude,
and
could you not have said like the same 6, 7 names? It would have been funnier.
All right.
I don't know how realistic Kalen DeBoer is at this point now that they are now in the SEC championship game. But if I just give you 4 names that we've been starting to hear emerge that we haven't talked about yet, and you guys have to pick the best of the names very quickly, no justification. Or I'll either just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down for the name. Let's do that.
Let's do thumbs up. Yeah.
For those listening at home, I'll quickly narrate it. But Kalani Sitake, BYU's head coach. I'm thumbs up. Josh is thumbs up. Justin and Thomas are thumbs down. A more reluctant thumbs down. Josh Heupel from Tennessee. 4 thumbs down in the chat, folks.
SEC's James Franklin.
Bob Chesney. 3 of the 4 of us, no shocker here, Justin was the one with the thumbs down. And then lastly, Lincoln Riley. The only coach to get all 4 thumbs up convincingly, despite a reluctant Thomas at one point. Just food for thought. Oh, let's one more. Mike Tomlin. Oh, Josh just threw himself off the camera.
Actually
He's
should
now paling himself into a highway.
You probably should throw Brian Dable.
I was going to say, Brian
Dable has been
one.
floated.
Thumbs down. But just for the meme of it, I would love to see Justin have to watch him coach 2 of his teams. But by the way,
I'm actually thumbs up here for Brian Dable.
I think Brian Dable is an interesting choice because of,
success.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting storyline there. But yeah,
I get backing from Nick Saban. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. I mean, Nick Saban, obviously, his word is very important. So I think that is how we'll end the coaching
Josh's
carousel.
Word when you think about it. Anyway, continue.
Well, let's move on to the top 25 that we have for this week.
God, I forgot we still have to do this too.
Wow.
Well, I don't think there's much conversation because they're really, other than Texas A&M losing to Texas and being dropped to 7 in our poll, there wasn't much shift other than in the 21 to 25 range. Arizona's in, Navy is back in, UNLV stays. I want to talk about the scenario with the top 25 college football playoff committee rankings, where couple things. One, if Alabama loses the SEC championship, somehow they could still miss the college football playoff as the SEC runner-up. The other scenario, which I think is more prevalent, is if Duke wins this ACC championship, which we'll talk about the matchups in a little bit, there could be 2 G5 teams in the playoff. And according to our rankings, that's North Texas and JMU. But I have to ask, and Josh, we'll start with you first this time. Do you see the committee putting in a team like Miami? I know that was something you mentioned in that place as an at-large.
I absolutely think you would, because I think, look, I think that a lot of this comes down to money too for the college football playoff. And the ACC is, a Power 4 conference. They're going to have some form of representation. I think there's a very high chance that Duke wins this ACC championship game. I think it's a lot closer than people think. And I think I think you'll probably see this be a little bit reflected in the college football playoff rankings that come out later this week. I think you'll either see Miami move up a few, or they might even do what a lot of people have suggested that the college football playoff might have to do because of the fact that Miami and Notre Dame are getting closer and closer together in their rankings. They might just go ahead and put Miami ahead of Notre Dame because of the head-to-head. And they have the same record. Miami has, sure, losses that don't look as good as the losses that Notre Dame had, but at some point head-to-head has to matter, and we're getting into a really interesting scenario where the committee does have to make a decision. I think they are going to put themselves in a place where if Duke wins and there are 2 G5 teams in, because I don't think you can rank Duke higher than 2 12-1 group of 5 teams that have won their conference championship, you're going to see Miami get one of those at-large bids for sure. I think there's a very good argument to be made for Miami. No matter how you slice it, Pitt was a ranked win at the time. They did get another ranked win on their schedule. Notre Dame also beat Pitt as well, and they were ranked at the same time. So, I mean, their resumes are rather comparable for those two, and Miami does have the head-to-head. I could easily see the committee putting Miami ahead of Notre Dame later this week, and I do think if Duke ends up winning, Miami will get an at-large I think they'll get an at-large bid for sure.
I'm gonna go for either Justin or Dylan, whichever you guys want to answer. But right now in our rankings, even if Virginia wins, we have North Texas and JMU ahead of them in the rankings. And again, the official language is the top 5 highest ranked conference champions. So by our rankings, even if Virginia wins, let's say the committee ranks for whatever reason similar to our rankings, could you see a situation where even if Virginia wins, they miss out?
No, just because the committee values Virginia's record and their resume more than we value it. If we were the committee, absolutely. I think we also root for chaos and entertainment. And I do think we would rather see a JMU team get into the dance and get battered than not get into the dance at all, despite having a more exciting season. Virginia, I think, has just benefited from chaos in the ACC and a weird non-conference conference game that has literally ended up making their season. Yeah, Josh, that's your weird conference we're talking about. And your creepy team, Wolfpack, whatever the heck this thing is. What is that? Is it like knockoff, hook 'em horns?
No, it's a wolf.
Why is it doing this? Wolves don't. Anyways, I would put North Texas and JMU in, but I'm an agent of chaos. There's a very large contingent of people that I know out in Charlottesville that have put my head on a dartboard in the last couple of weeks. Now that I've been hating on UVA, so I for them, great. Hope UVA gets in, but I would put the 2 G5 schools in because I want chaos.
Justin, I want to ask you a question. With Texas,
I'll have an answer.
Texas has some very good wins on their resume. Is a Texas team someone you see somehow getting in this week after their big win over Texas A&M?
No, it would be a fun food for thought because I think I would go off if a 3-loss SEC team made the college football playoffs. And here is actually the reason Texas won't go up too high to the point where they're on the outskirts. Maybe a couple of things fall their way. It's because of Miami. If you look at what the college football rankings did, they put Miami at 12 last week, and Texas was down at 16. And by way of playing a ranked opponent in Pitt, who should have been out of the rankings, in my opinion, at that point after the brutal loss to Notre Dame, Miami also beat a ranked opponent this week. So Miami can really only stay put or go up. Texas is not going to be able to jump Miami. The committee set this up in a way knowing that if Miami and Texas won, that they could keep that same precedent of, well, we already had Miami in front of Texas. Now we don't need to jump Texas over them. And I think what that does is it makes things a little, weird around that little area, the 11 through 13 range. But the simple answer is we're going to see Miami jump BYU this week and be right there so that if Alabama loses the SEC championship, Alabama falls out and Miami gets it. If Virginia loses to Duke and we have to go through that whole scenario, they are lining it up, in my opinion, so Miami does get in one way or another. And I play this card. If Miami gets in, they're losing not on a Big 12 team, most likely, not on a Big 10. They're losing an SEC school, likely Miami, or not likely Alabama from there. Yeah. Alabama and the SEC bring in a lot more revenue for college football than Miami does. And the group of 5 storylines would be just probably more fun for a lot of people to watch. I don't think the revenue part that Josh brought up should really be brought into account. I know it will be, but I just, this whole Miami situation, I think, is stupid, especially the head-to-head with Notre Dame, all that stuff. At the end of the day, you asked me, could Texas get in? No, because of Miami.
I think my thing with the committee and the way they've been ranking this year.
Also, wait, time out. Sorry. Before you go, if Alabama falls out after losing the SEC championship game, you can say goodbye to championship games and conferences.
I was just going to say that.
Should note that because that's another week of revenue getting poured into the NCAA.
I think I was just going to mention something about that with the fact that not only Alabama, but BYU as well is another team that could lose their conference championship game and find their way on the outside of the college football playoff.
As of right now, they still are technically on the outside because
they're on the outside right now.
But here's the thing: if we're gonna play that card, technically, what I think the committee should do, and I don't think they're gonna do it, but they really should. You have to punish it. You not necessarily punish, but you can't punish a team for playing the extra game. You can technically give Notre Dame a slight punishment for not having a conference because, again, the committee, the commissioner came out and said that because at the moment where they first ranked Notre Dame and Miami, they weren't in that same bracket or pool of teams. They're now in that same pool of teams, and you have to look at them comparatively. And because Miami has the same record and the same amount of ranked wins, including a ranked win over Notre Dame, you have to, by your standard that you have set, and you have said is going to play a factor in head-to-head, you have to put Miami ahead, and you have to punish a team like Notre Dame that doesn't have a chance to move up and can't just sit pat by playing a bunch of fodder ACC teams for the majority of their season. That's just not how it's going to work. You can't punish a team like Alabama. You shouldn't punish BYU. Should be ranked higher than they are regardless. They're an 11-1 Power 4 team. It's absurd that they are possibly going to miss out on the playoff as a one-loss Power 4 team. And Notre Dame is going to get in and they've lost their two most important games of the season.
There's another chaos scenario here in which BYU beats Texas Tech. It knocks Alabama and Notre Dame out of the college football playoffs. If Duke also beats Virginia and they sneak Miami in and Alabama loses the SEC championship, I mean, we could be talking about Notre Dame and Alabama both being out, Miami being in, and two group of fives being in, and BYU being in.
I think it boils
to be the odd team out in my opinion. Given what could possibly happen, they should be the team that's really scared going into conference championship weekend because they don't have a way to prove themselves. They should be the team that has the most to lose.
I think the biggest thing that we're looking at from this conversation is that there is a problem with the way that they have ranked all of the college football playoff rankings so far. Having Tulane in over two teams that arguably I think we've ranked both higher than Tulane. Having BYU ranked too low potentially. Having some issues with head-to-head matchups between Notre Dame and Miami. And simply put, an SEC team with 3 losses above some teams that maybe should be higher than them. And I think that's where the committee is trying to avoid these situations so much by ranking teams in certain spots that they're really hurting themselves more by doing so. So I think that's where it boils down to because, in my opinion, the SEC championship game, both of those teams should be a guaranteed college football playoff team. Same with some of the other conferences. Obviously, the Big Ten will be this year. But the Big 12 even. I mean, BYU is a very good team, and they deserve a chance in the college football playoff. But if they lose this game, I understand they're on the outside looking out right now, and I agree with Josh. They should be ranked higher. I think you have to be sitting here as a fan, from a fan perspective, and saying, well, these rankings just aren't right based on the fact that the top 2 teams in the Big 12 aren't automatically guaranteed. But you can have 4 or 5 teams from the SEC almost – deadlocked into it. So I think there's some interesting developments from that. Like Justin said, there are a lot of different chaos scenarios, we'll call them. A simple Duke win could change things. A simple Alabama loss could change things. So I think there's a lot to talk about that we'll kind of break down more next week when the college football playoff bracket is released. And there will be a lot of things that come of that. And it's seriously going to put into question a lot of different things that the rankings and the committee have decided. But any last thoughts from any of you before we move on to our picks for this week? I know we're already over an hour and still haven't gotten to our picks.
I'm ready to get an
You guys are lucky. You guys are lucky that we're talking college football playoff and that I can't go on a rant about how you guys have Michigan and USC still in the top 20.
Well, that's for another day. Why wouldn't
they be in the top 20? Michigan, what?
Because they lost and neither team has wins.
You did not drop Michigan for losing as badly as they did to Ohio State. You kept them in the exact same spot. Actually, did you move them up? I think you moved them up.
Yeah, I didn't think they played bad yesterday, by the way.
They scored 9 points.
Their quarterback couldn't complete a pass. By the way, the quarterback I gave a ringing endorsement to earlier this season.
Anyway, let's move on. We're over an hour in. We'll argue about this in the group chat.
Yeah, we'll argue more when we get our final rankings for the year. I think,
which is all that I was saying is that I'm waiting for that because I'm just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks at this point. All right, gentlemen.
All righty. All right. Well, let's recap last week very quickly, not with the matchups, but with our scores individually. I went 8 for 10, Justin 7 for 10, Dylan and Josh 6 for 10. And let's give a round of applause. Grant goes 1 for 10 for the week. There we go. Let's give him some. We did give Grant a point for Navy because going into it, all of us forgot the game was on Thursday and not Friday. Some of us had made our picks. Some of us didn't. We decided to give everyone a point because without looking at the game, we all put Navy down on the sheet anyway. So we did give ourselves points there. I got the full 8 points. So did Justin, got the full 7. Josh got an extra point from his long shot for 7 points. Dylan did lose a point for his lock for a total of 5 points. So your overall total, I'm at 80. Josh is at 75. Justin at 74. Dylan at 73. So still anybody's game. And Grant trailing behind. The records, I'm at 85 and 35. Justin at 78 and 42. And Josh and Dylan both at 73 and 47. So let's get into our college football championship week predictions. Just a little bit of a heads up. We are picking all 9 conference championships, and then we are additionally picking Navy and Army, which is the week after. So that'll give us our 10 games, and then we'll go from there. This week as well, we're going to be doing just locks for the week from this slate because there are no other games to be picked. So let's start with Navy Army, which is a huge tradition rivalry game. Always the week after conference championship games. Justin, we'll start with your pick.
Yeah, I think Navy's the better team, but regardless, no matter what, Grandpa was in the Navy, so I'm going to go with Navy without a doubt. Every year it's Navy no matter what.
Dylan?
My grandfather was in the United States Army. Go Army, beat Navy, and just beat them too now just because Justin picked them, and I'm mad at Justin this week.
Josh?
My stepfather, Watson, was in the Navy, so it is go Navy, beat Army.
Shout out Watson.
I'm going to pick Navy as well. I wish Navy had scheduled this game. I know it's the same thing every year, but I wish they scheduled the game before so they would have a chance in the conference championship, but I'll take Navy. We'll move on to the Conference USA. I don't think we've ever talked about any of the teams in this conference, but we're going to go with Kennesaw State versus Jacksonville State in this one. Justin, who are you going to pick?
Not many people know anything about either of these teams. I happen to know a little bit about Jacksonville State for whatever reason, and I know at one point this year that they were campaigning for their running back Cam Cook to be in the Heisman race because he was doing that good. Just about 1,600 yards on the ground, 15 touchdowns. Also, these two teams already played 3 weeks ago, and Jacksonville State won. I'm rolling back that same result. Give me Jacksonville State.
Dylan?
Kennesaw State went from an FCS team that took the jump to the FBS and thought they'd be another laughing stock going 2-10 last year to now being in a conference title game and having a really, really solid season. Regardless, that's a win of a year for them, but let's add a little bit more fun to the party. I'm going to go with Kennesaw State. Plus, I got to start taking some chances, gentlemen. It's looking bleak in my odds. If I'm behind Josh, things have gone really south.
Josh, your pick.
Heck, man, why am I getting so many strays today? Jacksonville State was my first ever college football 25 dynasty rebuild. So
zero ball, man. Why are we going with that?
Because you watch Jacksonville and Kennesaw State football for sure. Okay.
I'm going to go with Kennesaw State. They were actually my first college football.
There you go.
So I'm going to go with Kennesaw State in this matchup. All right, let's move to some action. We have Miami, Ohio against Western Michigan. Justin, you're picking this one.
Yeah, I have a problem that I have to air out on this podcast. Earlier today in our group chat, Thomas said that the MAC was bad football. That is a lie. The MAC is about football for real, true football fans. So, Thomas, you really told us a lot about yourself. No, we
need context for this.
For an hour and 10
We
minutes.
need context for this. I quickly.
Okay.
I was looking at the MAC standings and was texting quickly and realized I did not type out Conference USA, and I instead typed MAC because that was in my head. So
The
I do
letters aren't
apologize
even
to
close
any
to the
MAC
same.
fans.
I also had mac and cheese for dinner, which came up in the group chat as well. At the end of the day, these two teams also played this year, with Miami coming away with the regular season win. But for me, I just don't see them repeating that success. Western Michigan's had a better year slightly. So give me Western Michigan.
Dylan?
Same here. Their only loss this season, Western Michigan, came to Miami, Ohio, and I think their other loss this season comes to Miami, Ohio. So give me the Red Hawks.
Josh?
I could use the exact same logic used in the last one to really tick off Dylan, but I do really like the running game. Western Michigan because I used Western Michigan this year in my college football 26 dynasty, but their run game has been stellar as well, and I think they're just going to kind of find a way to just wear and tear down this Miami, Ohio team. So I'm going to go with Western Mich.
Yeah, I really don't know too much about these teams, but I'm going to go with Western Michigan. Like Josh said, I quickly looked at some of the stats, and their running game really stood out. So give me Western Michigan, and maybe they get another win against Miami. Maybe they get a win. I'm going to go to next matchup with UNLV and Boise State. I think we know who Dylan's going to pick in this one. Dylan, do you want to kick us off?
That's all I need, gentlemen.
Go Dan Mullen.
That's all she wrote. Justin, will go to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a matchup where I think earlier in the year, I don't know if we picked it, but we at least talked about it. And Boise State,
we did pick it.
Boise State surprisingly won like 56-36 or something like that, which was a shocking result. You could look at that and say it's going to happen again, or you can look at the fact that UNLV is ending this season on a 4-game winning streak. That's going to end. Give me Boise State to repeat the success of earlier this season. I was going to go UNLV, but something changed me out of it last second. Give me Boise State.
Josh?
Wow. Yeah, UNLV is playing some of their best football down this stretch, and Boise State kind of had to really climb from behind against a bad Utah State team last week. So I'm going to go with UNLV. And I don't like the fact that I've kind of had similar picks to Dylan because I do need to find a way to finish ahead of him in this season.
I believe you've had the opposite picks of him.
Have we really?
Actually.
Well, not until he did pick Army. Never. I'm still I could go over 10.
I believe you picked every opposite to Dylan, but I'm going to go with UNLV as well. I like the way they've been playing as of late. I believe I picked Boise State with Justin maybe earlier in the year, and Boise State won that game, but I think UNLV is a better team this time around. So give me UNLV. Let's move to the Sun Belt. Troy is playing James Madison. James Madison, chance to win the conference and potentially be in the college football playoff. Justin, who do you like?
Sorry, I was trying to find out what we picked earlier in the year. One of these teams has a ranking next to their name that we have ranked even higher. Look, I've got a good friend named Troy, but honestly, that doesn't really make a difference here. I also have a friend called James Madison, and he's going to go and win this week. Give me JMU.
All right. Dylan?
There's been a lot of real stupid stuff and I'm kind of losing my patience for it, but I'm going to add more to it. Earlier, one of you guys said something about JMU only being good because of Kurt Cignetti. Do we not remember the fact that they were an FCS wagon before they took the jump, and Kurt Cignetti was still at IUP somewhere? So I
think you misinterpreted my words in which I said they were a winner before Cignetti, won with Cignetti, and are now winning with Chesney.
No, so I think you said that in our 2:34 in the morning, whatever conversation about this. I don't think that came up on our podcast. But sorry, I'm talking. Please, thank you. You continue to bash Bob. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, you continue to bash Bob Chesney, and at this point, because of it, it's made it personal for me, and it's really only because I like Kenny Chesney, not Bob Chesney. Give me JMU to win by 1,000, and then Bob hops on a plane to State College.
Josh. Hopped off the plane at State College.
Yeah, I don't know why
runway's too short.
Justin having a friend named Troy matters because I'm sure he knows at least 2 people named James as well. JMU is winning this one by however much they please, quite frankly. This is going to be not even close.
I believe this is the only game that when I checked the betting sites earlier was a double-digit favorite game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this was a heavy, heavy favorite JMU, and I think they have a good reason to be a heavy favorite. So give me James Madison. Justin, I found the previous game.
It was you and I with Boise State.
As well as Grant Sheets.
That's right,
Sheets
when he still made picks.
Yeah, so Grant got that right with Boise State. That was in week 8 of the college football season. So just a little tidbit there. All right, let's move on to our top 5 conference championships that all have college football playoff implications. Not that JMU did not, but we'll go with North Texas and Tulane. This is a huge matchup because arguably right now, whoever wins this is almost guaranteed into the college football playoff. Justin, who do you like?
Yeah, and whoever wins this is not going to have their actual head coach in the college football playoff either, based off the fact that they were both hired away. I spoke earlier. I said that I really like Eric Morris in North Texas. I'm rooting for that success story. However, I just see John Sumrall coaching a more talented football team at this point. You know, they've won against good big competition. They went on the road and beat Duke. We all know that game earlier this year, which I think all of us had picked Duke or something like that. I like Jake Retzloff. I wish Tulane had established a better running game with a running back and not just Retzloff, which I think could become the difference in this game. But North Texas's weak spot is their defense, and I can see Tulane just kind of taking off the top with Retzloff's arms and his legs. So give me Tulane to beat North Texas.
Dylan?
Caught a lot of that North Texas game the other day. Estemaker continues to be as advertised. Again, he's going to be one of the top portal quarterbacks, and I don't think he goes to Oklahoma State. I think it would take a lot of money because he's going to be coveted by even better programs than that. But I do believe Eric Morris's contract runs through a potential college football playoff, not just the conference championship game. And also, anytime your coach outwardly says your team sucks, I'm going to go with the team that has been more fun to watch. Tulane grinds games out and really makes you play their brand of football. If this goes North Texas's way, I don't know if Tulane can keep pace with that. So I'm going to go the alternative of Justin's analysis here. Also, one more thing. Anytime I get to talk North Texas, JMU, and UNLV, I'm a happy boy. And this graphic, by the way, just this little section right here, can somebody frame that for me for a Christmas present? Because that's going to be the most aesthetically pleasing 3 logos that I've seen all year, especially with my UNLV boys in it.
Josh?
Yeah, you brought up the fact that, Justin, North Texas's defense is a little bit subpar compared to their offense. And, Tulane can maybe run up the score. But here's the thing. If this game goes to a shootout, North Texas has the best offense in the country. They average almost 50 points a game. It's easily the best offense in the country. Drew Messmaker has one of the best touchdown to interception ratios in the country. He's been one of the best. I love a good offense. This North Texas team has been steamrolling pretty much everybody they've played besides their one loss earlier on in the season. I think that North Texas continues to find their way to win. And I agree with Dylan. Anytime your coach says you're not a top 25 team, it's kind of like when your coach says you can lose 110-3 and it won't really matter. You're not winning that football game.
Yeah, I think Tulane, I'm very confused how they were the ranked group of 5 team. Not that they're not a good team, but they have struggled in certain areas. And I think I want to value, like I said all year, I want to value wins. I value an 11-1 team. I am rooting for chaos again. Give me North Texas and JMU as 12-1 conference champions. Let's get them both in the college football playoff. So I'll take.
I can tell you why Tulane is ranked. It's because they beat Northwestern and Duke.
Well, right, and Duke.
That's the difference between these two. Is that Tulane played a little stronger, but they played relatively similar within conference play.
Right. Let's go to a crucial matchup, and a matchup that I don't think any of us saw coming into the year, with Duke and Virginia as your ACC matchup. Now, Duke got in with a bunch of analytics and tiebreaker situations. They're 7-5. Virginia is 10-2. This is a pivotal matchup. Justin, who do you like?
They already played this year, and Virginia it felt like ran away with that game because they went into the fourth quarter and the score was 31-3, if I'm not mistaken. Virginia was the much better team that day. Look, I don't like UVA. I've made my opinion well known on this podcast about my thoughts on this year's UVA team. Unfortunately, though, for UVA, none of what I've said matters, and they continue to win. That being said, I root for chaos. I root for good guys and Manny Diaz, and I'm picking Duke. I don't like UVA. I remember that podcast, the one where I went fishing earlier that day and caught nothing. But I caught your guys' attention with what I said that night about UVA, and a week later it all came to fruition. So guess what? It's going to come to fruition again. And let me tell you, we're going to have 2 group of 5 teams in the college football playoff because of Manny Diaz.
Dylan?
I'm caught between a rock and a hard place here, gentlemen. As I mentioned, I don't know if I can go back to Charlottesville right now. They really don't like me there. And they particularly don't like me after how much crap I've been talking ahead of the Commonwealth game that they ended up ultimately winning. And you would think that these children won the Super Bowl the way that Charlottesville has never seen a win this big.
Children.
I'll also add in the fact, why are we storming the field? You beat a 3-8 football team that has a new coach that can't coach yet. Let's temper our expectations here. Hold our horses, if you will. I also root for chaos, and the thought of Manny Diaz winning it with a 5-loss Duke team just cracks me up. Like, they could finish the year with 6 losses if they win this and get a good bowl game. And realistically, we would have an 8-6 or a 7-6 team that was the ACC champion. Anyways, I'm going UVA, one, because I do like Charlottesville as a city, and I'd like to go back there at some point. But more realistic, Jamari Taylor, this run game, if he has a good game and he can break through on this Duke defense that I think is not exactly – they've showed their woes as the year's gone on at random points. I think Virginia does what Virginia did last time. So I'm going to go with that and say – welcome me back. But by the way, I don't know how you're going to storm the field in an ACC title game, but they're 7-5. We shouldn't exactly be celebrating like you won the Super Bowl.
Josh?
I am on the same page as Justin. I love chaos. And what I see is that this is a man who has only thrown 2 interceptions since September 13th, including a 4-touchdown game against Clemson a few weeks ago. And I love Manny Diaz. And I love when the ACC shoots themselves in the foot as my favorite conference of all time and doesn't get a team in, and you get University of North Texas and James Madison University in there. Duke by 50. Give me the Blue Devils.
If there's anything I've learned about the ACC this year, is that you have absolutely no idea what is going to happen. Just when you think SMU is going to kick a field goal to tie the game, to send it into overtime, to have a chance to put themselves in the ACC title game, they mess it up. They allow Duke in, and Duke is going to take advantage of being in this championship game. I'm rooting for chaos as well. I've been high on having 2 group of 5 teams in. I think Duke winning, like Dylan said, as a potential 7-6 team if they lose their bowl game would just be hilarious, and the committee would be kicking themselves for the way they've ranked this year. So give me Duke to get a funny win, in my opinion. Let's move on to the Big 12. Kind of a win and in situation for these 2 teams, a little bit more win and in for BYU than Texas Tech. But this is a repeat matchup. Both teams are 11-1. Dylan, we'll start with you. Who do you like?
I have a tough time with this game. It goes back to I did a in-depth breakdown of this when I picked this game last time. And I went the wrong way with it. I like Bear Bachmeier, but he made me look like an idiot for eating that tortilla and throwing that tortilla around my kitchen. So I am caught between
I forgot about that.
I'm also caught between a rock and a hard place in this game because I also have become a big Kalani Sitake fan. Anytime that you are a huge Hawaiian man who can dance and move like he is, I'm all in on him as Penn State's next head coach. Also, he's building top 50 recruiting classes at a school where they make you go across the country to do, or sometimes out of the country to do mission trips. And also, Mormon, soaking, okay, all that. It's a hard sales pitch. But lastly here, I'm going to go with Texas Tech. I think they're going to be the best standard, and to give you some actual real football analysis here, I think they're going to be the biggest standard for a lot of these coaches that just took the G5 leap. I think for a lot of programs that maybe felt like they left meat on the bone this year, to say that, yeah, you might have lost some guys in the portal, or yeah, you might have lost some guys that are graduating, or felt like you had a down year, but if you got money, and if you got that oil money, you can make some things happen. You can make some things happen really quickly. And for Texas Tech, they've done that, and they've become a cohesive unit. And I think this is a team that is going to be a scary and a hard out in the college football playoffs. So give me Texas Tech, unfortunately, to crush BYU's playoff dreams. And then give me Kalani Sitake doing that little jig he was doing with the lay on. I'm all in, man.
Justin?
Yeah, I remember the podcast that we picked this game, and I said that I had learned from my mistake. Make sure you pick BYU. And then I picked Texas Tech, but I told myself on that podcast, I think I can go find the clip. I said I was picking this way in hopes that they would get to the Big 12 championship, in which I would pick differently. And whatever I was telling myself leading up to November 8th, I don't believe in anymore. But for whatever reason, I believe in myself from November 8th. So guess what? I'm picking BYU for no other reason, but I said it 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Always bet on yourself.
Always bet on yourself. And that's what I'm doing here. Give me BYU, even though my heart right now is telling me that that is a dumb move.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're really following your heart and you're listening to yourself from a previous life, aka like a month ago. But
Sorry.
No. Texas Tech has continuously dominated every team they've played that they've beaten, and including this BYU team. It is tough to beat the same team twice, but Texas Tech is a team that is built and bought for the college football playoff and this Big 12 title, and they're going to win it, in my opinion.
I think when you look at Texas Tech, the biggest thing is, yes, they're 11-1, but realistically, they're 11-0 because that one loss was without their starting quarterback. And I think Baron Morton is one of the underrated quarterbacks in the country. And this Texas Tech team, with being as many transfers and as things that they have, I think they're a top team that can compete with some Big Ten and SEC teams, and will be a hard out in the college football playoff, especially after they dominate BYU. I think BYU's inexperience will hurt them in this game. I love Bear Bachmeier, but I think his time is next year. I think he'll be a really, really good quarterback, even better than he's been this year. So give me Texas Tech in this one. And, man, I wish BYU was ranked higher so that they could be in the college football playoff as well. But I'll take Texas Tech, and let's move on to the SEC. This is a rematch of earlier where Bama did beat Georgia. Alabama coming off an Iron Bowl win over Auburn, and Georgia a nice win over Georgia Tech. So as you look at this matchup, Dylan, it seems like they come in the SEC championship every year to play each other, and every year it's a thriller. So who do you like?
It is funny.
That's not how that song goes.
Couldn't get my voice that high.
It's funny, Thomas, that it feels like every year, you kind of said that right, they always seem to be there against each other. This will be the third consecutive year that we're going to hear Pat McAfee do the "Who's that coming down the track?" And I think this could be a double down of his stunt he pulled in a year of SEC chaos, in a year where there's so many really good teams in the SEC. And I do think they're really good teams. I don't think it's just because the SEC's mediocre, beating up on each other, whatever you guys said earlier. As a potential hypothetical, I don't think that's true. I think there's deservingly should be a number of these teams playing for a national championship, and we shouldn't just try to slot some teams in to slot them in. Now, to say that, give me my two G5 teams, and I like chaos. But the reality in this is that these are two of the best four teams in the country. Honestly, I think these are two of the top three teams in the country. I don't know. I still love Ole Miss, but the coaching thing really threw some stuff around here. But Gunnar Stockton did not play his best game the other day against Georgia Tech. He did not look great. He did not look comfortable in the pocket. And he looked like Gunnar Stockton from against Notre Dame last year and not Gunnar Stockton, who has been at points this year in the Heisman conversation. So I do want to note that because this Alabama defense is better than what he went up against Georgia Tech. And it's hard to beat the same team twice in 1 year. And that's always been a sentiment that I've shared. But this Alabama team needs to win this game to get in. If they lose this game, it's going to be easier to try to maneuver them around, drop them out of it, and then also you lose the value of SEC title games. The SEC has to be praying that Alabama wins this game so that doesn't become a part of the conversation as well. I think Alabama wins it. I think they win the SEC title, and I feel pretty good about it based off what we saw from Gunnar Stockton the other day and this Georgia team, especially because I believe Nate Frazier is still pretty banged up, and this offense is kind of question mark without the run game.
Justin, you picked Auburn last week with the thought of Kalen DeBoer potentially coming to Penn State. You've been high on Alabama all year, though. Do you like him in this matchup?
This is one that I don't like at all because I was right when we picked this game earlier in the year. I picked Alabama to go on the road and upset Georgia at home. If this was played at one of, these specific universities on campus, I think it would make my pick different. I don't like the neutral field behind any of this. We saw Alabama go on the road and have a 3-point win at Georgia, which I guess would then favor Alabama on a neutral field. But you also have to think about the revenge part of it, that Georgia is looking for revenge this week, not just to beat Alabama, but to knock them from the playoffs, most likely, if they get a win. Obviously, it depends on where the College Football Committee has Alabama ranked. But to me, Dylan just pointed out a bunch of things potentially wrong with Georgia, right? They had a bad week against Georgia Tech. Gunnar Stockton had a bad game. Nate Frazier was banged up. That says don't pick Georgia. But on the same side, let's not forget that Alabama took to the final minutes to defeat a Auburn team that didn't have a head coach until this morning. And Alabama the last couple weeks has been on the fence in some games. I mean, you obviously ignore the 56-0 win against East Illinois, and you look at the
powerhouse
loss to Oklahoma, and you look at the LSU game that was played closely. In fact, most of Alabama's games have been played closely this year. For that reason, yes, it's neutral field, but realistically, it's in Georgia. The Bulldog fan's going to be barking, and when Pat McAfee says, "Who's that coming down the track?" Oh, it's going to be a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan after a win. Give me the Bulldogs to win the SEC championship.
It surprises me a little bit considering how high you were on Alabama, but I mean, at this point, it could go either way this game. So, Josh,
but who's had Georgia as their number 2 in the country for the last 3 weeks? Also me. I'm high on both teams.
That's true. That is true. Josh,
SEC
who do you like?
homer over here. Yeah, I think. Well, I just like that Dylan said SEC and hypothetical right next to each other back to back a few minutes ago because that is the SEC's favorite word. They are really stacking up those hypothetical wins this season, especially. But moving forward, Gunnar Stockton didn't necessarily have a great game against Georgia Tech, but that was a ranked Georgia Tech team. That was still a pretty good Georgia Tech team that going into this season, I remember a lot of us said we're a team that was probably going to win the ACC. I thought going into the season, they were going to be a team that could have really given Georgia a run for their money after taking them to 8 overtimes last season. And the defense still showed out. I understand there's black magic at Jordan Hare, but the fact that you needed Auburn fumbling twice on one drive, then having a pass go off a receiver's head directly into your linebacker's lap, then another fumble to win the game against Auburn, and also your winning drive had 2 roughing the passer penalties and 2 pass interference calls that were pretty phantom to give you the lead late in the game against Auburn, a team that was 1-6 in the SEC, and like Justin said, had no head coach until earlier this morning. That's a lot more telling to me than a Georgia team battling in a quote-unquote neutral site game against a still tough Georgia Tech team and one of the most resilient quarterbacks we're going to ever see in Haynes King. I love Georgia. It's an age-old saying, Dylan, you said earlier, it's very tough to beat a team twice. It's especially tough to do that in a conference like the SEC where everyone beats up on each other. I've got Georgia winning this one.
Can you do the Georgia Park like that one commercial?
What was that, guys?
Oh my God. What are we doing? What are we doing? I think, man, this matchup is tough because going into this one, I was thinking, if Alabama wins the Iron Bowl convincingly, I feel confident picking Alabama against Georgia. And same thing with Georgia. If Georgia beats Georgia Tech, I feel good about Georgia going into this matchup. But neither team really, I think, we've heard it from everyone, neither team really performed super well in their last contest during rivalry week. And I think you have to look at that previous matchup and say, you know what? Alabama did get a win. I think it is hard to beat a team twice in a year, but this has been one of the weirdest years I've seen in college football. And you know what? I'm rooting for Alabama to get in because I think that, they deserve it with being in the SEC championship. I would hate to see the SEC runner-up lose, but let's just say I'm going to pick Alabama just to get the win and just to get into the college football playoff. I just think that Georgia, for whatever reason, can't get over Alabama as of late. So give me the Tide, and let's move on to our final matchup. Is in the Big Ten. As it stands right now, it's number 1 versus number 2. There are 2 undefeated teams in the country right now, and there will be one after this week. Dylan, which team remains undefeated?
I watched the game on Saturday, and I guess, was the only one who came away still impressed with Michigan, despite Bryce Underwood not completing a pass. Julian Sayin made a bad move. Julian Sayin threw an interception, and for a second there, I think Ryan Day was literally checking out property probably anywhere else in the country because I don't think they were going to let him back across state lines. And then Julian Sayin did what Julian Sayin's pretty much done all year, been steady as can be. And in a time in which Ryan Day has had some erratic quarterbacks, be it the guy from a year ago and Will Howard, who made some poor decisions and sometimes didn't rise to the moment. And then he did, obviously, in the national title game and in the college football playoff. But in the game against Michigan, he was frazzled just as much as Day was, and the team as a whole was. But this is an older team now, and a battle-tested team, and a team that went through that heartbreak a year ago. And a lot of those guys are still there. And they have taken every challenge, come to it and risen over it this entire season. And the core that was there, Styles, Downs, Smith, Tate, and then now add Sayin in as the starting quarterback. They all got that monkey off their back. They've overcome every obstacle in front of them this year. And to me, as steady as Sayin's been is the best example of how steady this team's been. I think they're a better team, actually, than they were a year ago when they won the national title. I think they're undisputed the number 1 overall team in the country. I think they are more than befitting of being the Big Ten champions this year. I think they're going to be a great national champion, potentially. I won't go as far as to make that full prediction yet until we see the bracket. And I also think they beat Indiana by 2 scores. So I'm going to keep that as simple as possible. You might win a lot. You might have won 12 games this year, but at least this year you will not be winning a Big Ten championship, Mr. Signetti. Give me the Ohio State Buckeyes.
I want to go to Josh next for his pick and save Justin's pick here. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, unlike Dylan, I also did watch the game, but I came away with the fact that Michigan is just not good. And I did not move them up in my rankings. I actually took them out of my rankings, I believe. No, I kept them in. Just kidding. But I did drop them because they looked terrible. And that is the fewest points that they've scored in a game against Ohio State, I think, this century. And I'm pretty sure that Ohio State's defense has given up the fewest points ever by an FBS team. And they also played a preseason number 1 team that's still technically ranked in Texas, and a Michigan team that will probably still be ranked in the final college football playoff rankings as well. This Ohio State team is legit. I think that game proved to me. I think you brought up a very good point about Julian Sayin, Dylan, that he has been the most consistent quarterback. He did not get flustered by that pick on his second pass of the game and came back and was almost perfect for the rest of that game. I have been high on Indiana. At one point earlier this season, I had Indiana ranked higher than Ohio State. The game against Michigan really kind of flipped that switch for me. I think Ohio State is the best team in the country. I think they're the most well-rounded team in the country, and I think they're going to stifle that Indiana offense. I think it'll be a very good game. This is unfortunately a very underwhelming 1v2 matchup in terms of national relevance because nobody really seems to care about it, even though it is 1v2. And it's the first time we've had that this season. I think it's going to be fantastic. But I think it's because of the extended college football playoff. People don't care about it as much, but they should. It's going to be a great game. I have Ohio State winning late in this one.
I think I want to save Justin's pick for last here because I feel like he has a strong opinion on this game. But I'm very happy that they did not play in the regular season, and it's leading up to now being both undefeated, the number 1 and 2 teams in the country in the Big Ten championship, as all things should be. I like the matchup a lot. Ohio State has really impressed me. Carnell Tate, I mean, I feel like he is – I texted this to you guys, but like Ohio State always seems to have that number 2 receiver that would be a wide receiver 1 in any other program in the country. Carnell Tate is legit. I know Jeremiah Smith is very, very good, but Carnell Tate is going to be a really good NFL receiver one day. So I like Ohio State. I like Indiana as well. But when I look at Indiana, when they came against a very, very high-quality opponent last year in the college football playoff in Notre Dame, they didn't perform. And I think Ohio State is a caliber of team that it is tough to compete against, especially that defense. And they just have shown that there is nothing they control every game. They don't let it get out of hand. They don't let they really do just control everything. The scores all seem calculated for whatever reason. So I'm going to take Ohio State in this one, but I would love to see these two rematch in the national championship. I think it would be a very, very good contest. So give me Ohio State in this one with potential for a second matchup later on. Justin, we'll go to you to round out the picks.
I'm a little confused on why I'm picking last here, but I'll take it. I take the honor in making the pick last. I want to play this game that we talked about earlier in the year. Maybe we should look at common opponents and look at the, score differentials in those games. So let's play this game with these two teams. Ohio State won 34-16 over Illinois. Indiana won 63-10 over that same Illinois team. Ohio State beat Penn State 38-14. That's 24 points for those of you who don't know how to do math. Indiana won by 3 points. Was it 3? 3 points. 27-24 just a couple weeks ago. Ohio State beat Purdue 34-10. Indiana won 56-3. I think that's all their common opponents that I can see off the top of my eyes right now. You notice that Indiana has more dominant wins, but my good buddy Dylan Price once said, Kurt Signetti just likes to run up that score late. And the more you think about it and look at how Indiana played against Iowa when they weren't able to run up the score. Same thing against Penn State. They showed a lot of flaws in more areas than one. Because I can tell you, Ohio State has shown like one flaw a game at times. And like for the Michigan game, you could argue saying was that flaw for a little bit of that game. But this is an Indiana team that showed flaws all over against Penn State a couple weeks ago. And they did so against Iowa. And I think we forget history because last year they were ranked 6th and 8th respectively. It was in the regular season. Ohio State handled this Indiana team with ease. While people were saying the same thing they're saying this year, that these two teams are very close. They could, be even matched up evenly. I can tell you for sure this Ohio State team has way more talent on it. I'm not looking at the quarterback situation here because I think Fernando Mendoza's been great. I think Julian Sain's been great. I'm looking at the defensive line. I'm looking at the defenses in general. This Ohio State defense is full of first-round talent. It's full of talent in general. I look at Arvell Reese. He is going to be a game wrecker in this game. I wanted to pick Indiana. No, I didn't. I was never picking Indiana. Ohio State takes this one, and Dylan said by 2 scores. I'm just going to have some fun here and say 3 scores. 17-point win for Ohio State. Cements themselves as the number 1 team. They get the bye, and then we'll see what happens to them in the college football playoffs. But give me the Buckeyes to defeat Indiana in their home state, mind you, at Lucas Oil.
So only 2 sweeps of the week are James Madison and Ohio State, and maybe rightfully so, two programs that are heading potentially towards the college football. Well, Ohio State will be heading towards the college football playoff. So for our locks and long shots this week, obviously a little tough to do that with only 10 games, but we are going to do a lock, and you're basically going to double down on a team of our top 5 matchups, which is the American, ACC, Big 12, SEC, and Big 10 matchups. Double down on a team that you have picked. If that team wins, you're fine. You get the point. If the team loses, you will be deducted a point in addition to that. So, Dylan, we'll start with you. You know
Dylan,
what? We're just going to –
Dylan, that pick does not count. We said it had to be the top 5.
Should we allow it, though?
Yeah, because it's Dylan.
It's my brand.
We'll allow Dylan to pick this one. Go ahead, Dylan.
It's his brand.
I put it on the sheet, but I can change it.
We'll allow it.
What if I risk it? Because it's not really that big of a game. A lot can't hurt me. A lot can't help me. It can only hurt me. Correct?
Correct.
Yes.
I'll do 2 locks this week. But if I get both right, can I get an extra point?
Yeah.
Hold up. Let's huddle up and meet. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'm cool with it.
Well,
After-
then I will
after
put all my chips to
yeah.
the table with UNLV one more time before the bowl game, because unfortunately they won't make a playoff. And then I am going to then double down on I don't want to be obvious because we both just said it, but I feel really convicted about the Big Ten championship and about Ohio State. So I'm sorry. I know that's not really super fun, but I think Indiana, the SIG's going to get burnt out this week. Sorry.
Okay.
Not that they still can't make the championship the other way. Ohio State did it.
Justin?
Yeah, I was going to pick Ohio State, but you know what? I don't like to repeat what other people do. I like to be on my own, be myself, be unique and authentic, bet on myself, as we said.
How's that working for you?
Not great.
Sorry.
And guess what? I'm going to not double down on BYU. That seems dumb, and so does doubling down on Duke. But the Georgia Bulldogs, that conviction is telling me that Kirby Smart is going to beat Kalen DeBoer, and not only beat him, but send him packing out of Tuscaloosa, hopefully on a private jet up to State College, Pennsylvania. But regardless, I picked Georgia as my lock this week. I don't know why. I think that's going to be a 3-point game. Probably shouldn't put a lock on it, but going to anyway.
Josh, I will say we will allow – I know Justin didn't want to repeat, but we will allow repeats because there is only 5 games and there's 4 of us. But
That's no fun.
go ahead.
That's no fun.
Duke. Come on, Duke.
Go ahead.
You would want me to pick Texas Tech because that seems to be the smarter pick between these two.
Well, you're not a smart person, though.
I'm not a smart person. I'm a dummy. And here's the thing. I love chaos and I love Manny Diaz and the Duke Blue Devils. I am locking in Duke to win and beat Virginia. Darian Mensah, 5 touchdowns, hit the golden buzzer. Duke over Virginia. That's
Tommy, this is all we've wanted from you all year long, and Josh just gave it to us. Can you do it too? Do it.
Gentlemen, did I not pick Pitt?
Oh my God! Cry me a river, build a bridge, and get over it. We want to see it again.
So we're allowing duplicates here or no? Because so far we have not duplicate.
I want Duke. I want it all alone.
Be different. Be
You know
bold.
what I'll do?
Be
You
calm.
know what I'll do? I picked Alabama last week. I picked Alabama to begin the season to go over their win total. I don't feel confident about it at all because I do think Georgia will have like Justin said, it'll be a 3-point contest or whatever. But lock me in for Alabama as my lock to win by – well, what other game would you like me to pick? Because I have Alabama, Ohio State.
Have some conviction like Dylan did and go pick Kennesaw State to pair with Alabama. Do it. Do it, Thomas.
About you know what?
Exactly. That's the risk we want.
Kennesaw State and let me get Texas Tech then.
Okay.
Dylan got Ohio State.
Right, fine.
Okay.
All right. I'll lock in Kennesaw State and Texas Tech as my lock this week. for a little bit of a double dosage there with Dylan. So we have made our picks for this week. It is conference championship week. We'll have a college football playoff bracket in just 1 week. I'm excited for the postseason. I know you guys are as well. We'll hopefully have some head coach updates for you on the next episode, and hopefully it'll be Penn State related. But if not, we'll talk about the candidates. We'll talk about other things that are going on. We are getting near the end, and we're going to have a bracket soon. So a lot to be excited about, and we will see you next time on Locks and Longshots.